when I talk about the paramitas, and I usually talk about them one at a time, I always, and some of you will recognize this because you've heard it before, but I'll repeat a general introduction to what the paramitas are, just so not everybody has heard this before. Perhaps for some of us who have, the reminder is helpful. So let me do that if I would. Paramita is a Sanskrit or Pali word. It's a Buddhist term that's usually we translate as perfections. Noble characteristics of enlightened beings. And probably, as you've heard me say, in Buddhism and Zen, we have quite a number of lists. And when we're new to practice, it can be a bit daunting, be overwhelmed with all this. And especially if you have the feeling that you have to memorize all of this. 3 treasures, 3 tenets, 3 pure precepts, 4 bodhisattva vows, 4 noble truths, 6 paramitas, 8-fold path, 10 grave precepts, and the 10,000 things, and more. It goes on and on and on. It's easy to be confused or feel like this is a big challenge to understand and integrate all of this. And I'd like to encourage anybody who's encountering this for the first time, or even if you've been around the paramitas before, to avoid that if you can. Avoid feeling that way if you can. Many people who've been practicing for a while grew and developed an appreciation of practices like the paramitas gradually over years of practice. And that's a good approach, I think, my opinion only, of course. If you approach these like koan, we don't sit down with the Mumonkan and try to tackle all 48 koans in the Mumonkan. We do them one at a time. So, if you're interested in these, I'd encourage you to approach them like koan. Work with them one by one, patiently, no hurry, take your time, and just sit with them and turn them over and over and over again. These are constructs, things like the Eightfold Path and the 4 Noble Truths and the Paramitas. And they have some energy and they have some power and they have some truth. But they're words, they're constructs that somebody created to help us understand, to give us tools that we can use to wake up. Waking up meaning to forget our small self and appreciate the unity of our lives. As such, because we're imperfect, perfectly imperfect, we'll never be finished studying these or working with them. As we say, inexhaustible delusions. So these 6 paramitas, or these 6 perfections translated, are generosity, which we did last time. That's dana paramita. Ethical conduct, which we'll talk about tonight. Sila, S-I-L-A, paramita. Patience, joyful effort, meditation, and understanding. Everybody's heard a lot about the last one. Understand the perfection of understanding. Prajna Paramita. It's central in the Heart Sutra. Anyway, tonight we'll talk about the second paramita being Sila Paramita, or ethical conduct, the perfection of ethical conduct. I'll confess, I've always struggled with notions of codes of ethical conduct and rules. Having been raised Roman Catholic and steeped in the Ten Commandments and all of that. And I learned that they were absolute. And there's things that you can do that are venial, and there's some things you can do that are mortal. And they're absolute. There's no way around them. Venial sins were less bad. You didn't break your friendship with God when you committed a venial sin, like telling a white lie. Mortal sins, on the other hand, were grave, and if one didn't repent before death, you'd surely be headed to eternal damnation. I didn't much like that as a kid, and I thought sooner or later, through no fault of my own, I was going to mess up. And then beyond that, fundamentalism always felt really intolerant to me, often with the loudest promoters of fundamentalism having their own dark shadows. But that's a conversation for another day. So then in Buddhism, we encounter Sila Paramita, or the perfection of ethical conduct. I liked, when I put together my notes, I like to borrow from people who know much more than I do. So you'll see a bit of that in here. There's a course description from a class they had at Upaya Zen Center, Joan Halifax's place in Santa Fe. And they said, it might seem like a funny kind of morality that's finally devoid of praise or blame. Devoid of praise or blame. Not only is there no bad person or good person in it, there's no person in it. Still, what happens really happens and really matters. And seeing that what really exists is only connections and flow and love. That really appealed to my Catholic sensibilities. There's another, I have another couple of quotes here that I really like. There's a woman named Barbara O'Brien from the Chicago Buddhist Meditation Group, and she offered a description of Sila Paramita that also resonates quite a bit for me. And Barbara says, this paramita is the enlightened quality of virtuous and ethical behavior and intentions, morality, self-discipline, impeccability, integrity, and harmlessness. The perfection of morality, she called it, is not about living according to rules, although there are precepts and they're important, but living in harmony with others. And then Norman Fischer says that this approach to ethical conduct, far from being uptight or rigid, is a joyful path of doing what naturally flows from the fullness of our hearts. I especially appreciate Norman's expression. And I know in other traditions there are many ways to approach ethical codes and morality and things like that. And some are much more like this than we might think. But often it feels very much like a set of thoughts and ideas, these rules that we have to remember. And when it looks like we're about to do something bad, we remember them and say, no, we shouldn't do that. And it seems dualistic and binary to me, or it feels that way. Norman makes it sound like it is our nature. Far from being uptight or rigid, it's a joyful path of doing what naturally flows from the fullness of our hearts. As with all of our practices, and this is just inescapable in Zen, isn't it? Meditation, of course, is at the root of how we approach practicing with and living Sila Paramita, the perfection of ethical conduct. Meditation is the core and it's the source for working with this and the other perfections. The more we become intimate with how our minds work, turning, this way and that, and picking and choosing, preferring, rejecting, bouncing around like a ball, like a pinball, the more we see how alike we are with everyone else. Everybody does that. Practicing this perfection of ethical conduct, I've read, has three parts to it. Noticing and checking conscious and unconscious selfishness. Selfishness lies at the core of a lot of our behavior, my behavior. Number two, developing virtue or the passion for goodness and caring about others. And three, feeling joy in loving and helping others without restraint. Or the Bodhisattva path beyond virtue. Norman says that ethical conduct is empty, both the entry point to the path and the path's ultimate fruition. Both the entry point and the path's ultimate fruition. All empty. And this is, at least for me, this is incomprehensible to my rational thinking process. So we go back to non-knowing, or the mind of Zazen as our key to the door. In our world, we're faced with making decisions about painful and urgent issues of either personal or local or national or global importance. We're faced with problems that we don't have clear ethical answers to. Does not killing always mean nonviolence? Is not taking action allowing greater harm to be done, possibly adding to suffering? These are not easy questions, and there isn't one answer to these questions. I put in the newsletter, Sokyo and I put in the newsletter yesterday, reference to Peter Coyote being a guest, and I don't know if anyone was able to attend when he talked, but he took us right to this. He took us right to oh, from the stillness of our zazen, we have to stand up and act. We have to act. But he gave us some guidelines for doing that without losing ourselves. Once again, Norman suggests that living in a complex world, many ethical dilemmas don't offer us good options. They certainly don't offer us perfect options. Sometimes only less bad ones. When we talk about these things, it's a bit weary of a thing to bring up, but it tends to come up in these conversations all the time. Would you have killed Hitler? Do not kill. I don't know that I have an easy answer to that question. We've got things going on today. Um, I won't go into details, but that are challenging all of us. What should we do? What's the perfection of ethical behavior when it comes to how should I act to interrupt the end of the American Republic? We really can't know, and there's no reliable moral choice that we can select that we can be assured is the right one. Absolutely. As we've said elsewhere, it's simple, but it's not easy, this practice. Practicing ethical conduct in this way in the realm of emptiness and the unknown, it leaves us flexible or it calls on us to be flexible. We have to be open. We have to be soft. We have to be forgiving versus confident and righteous. We have to reside in not knowing and then act anyway. That's the real beauty and the challenge of the three tenets. Nancy Baker talks about this a bit. It's, actually, Nancy Baker talks about this throughout her great book on the precepts. And she talks about those precepts, but in this case, ethical conduct itself being empty, that there's no hurting, no one to hurt, and no one to be hurt. This is quite a ways away from the Ten Commandments of my youth. It's not about, this kind of ethics is not about imposing or adhering to a list of strictures or controls from the outside on us. Nobody's keeping score. Rather, we see our being, actively being, or our lives as the flow of love, and our actions are in accord with the way that things are. Dogen Zenji, for Dogen Zenji, speech was a big part of this ethical conduct. And he said, you should speak to sentient beings as you would to a baby. And he said, kind speech has the power to turn the destiny of the nation. Now, I don't think he was exaggerating or being metaphorical or sentimental. I so appreciate this encouragement to bring this practice home, to experience it in my life, moment by moment, and to avoid getting spun up into philosophical or moral hypotheticals. What would you do? What's the right thing to do in this situation? Well, what if this happened? You know, what would the enlightened response be if this happened? I was thinking about this earlier this evening, and I have such a strong feeling for it, but I don't know that I can put words on it. I don't know that I can express it. But when we are still, as Kyoto Sensei says, stillness answers every question. Stillness answers all of these questions. So when we're still in our life and we can stay in that place when we're encountering these challenges and what appear to be these choices that are not really choices, when we're that still, when we're in that enlightened place, there is no choice. Choice implies some sort of dualism. Choice implies some sort of separation, as if two different things could be happening at the same time. When we're in that place, not knowing, bearing witness, let's say, and then we step out and do something, all there is the doing, the infinitive, the ing. That's all there is. There's no other option. And if we embody that fully, we are fulfilling this vow to Sila Paramita. What can I do right now to deter Putin? I had in my notes Putin. I could make that a long list tonight. Likely nothing. I can thank Sandy for making dinner earlier. I can put the clean dishes away after the dishwasher runs. I can spend an hour talking to my kids about something that they're doing and praise them for how they're stepping up with their mom. I can tell them that I love them. Norman, I'm relying quite a bit on his book, The World Could Be Otherwise. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. I know a lot of you have. But he offers us some great intimate practices in order to open our hearts as we practice with Sila Paramita, to wake up to the moment. And I didn't note all of the ones he suggested. I pulled a few that I really liked. And these are practical. These are things that we can go do to engage our heart. For a week, try to never criticize anyone. And people that we don't know thousands of miles away that we see on TV, they count. This is hard for me. I have quite a critical streak. For a week, consciously speak kindly to everybody that you encounter, saying how much you appreciate them and why. For a week, try to avoid assuming that you understand other folks' motivations. Assume that they have reasons that you couldn't possibly understand. Ask them questions. The fourth one that I liked was for a week. Whenever something happens that you dislike, which is very possibly multiple times a day, say to yourself, yes, yes, this is how it is. Yes, this is how it is. We practice this perfection of ethical conduct, this Sila Paramita, as we do everything else, moment by moment, breath by breath, with an open heart and an empty mind, not knowing what happens next, open to all of it. Yes, this is how it is. Absolutely certain of our fallibility, absolutely certain of my fallibility, with intimacy and appreciation for this life. Thank you for listening.